Hi everybody, welcome to another installment of Dwayne Allen Guitar Concepts. And tonight I'd like to talk about the idea of building your ear and ear training. And usually every lesson that I give has to do with a certain level, beginner, intermediate, advanced, that kind of a thing. But tonight I want to just tell you that this is for every level, whether you're a very new guitar player or you've been playing for 30 years, anywhere in between. This is something that we all need to think about more often and deal with more often. A lot of times when I have students or just hanging out with friends of mine that play guitar or whatever, they'll always ask me, like, what are the things that are the most important things to work on, right? And on this channel of mine here, I've been talking about a lot of different things, a little bit of technique and theory and things like that, and rhythm. We talked about rhythm and playing with the metronome. But I kind of think that maybe the most important thing that you should ever work on is developing your ear, because that's the one thing that all great musicians have in common. You know, there's tons of amazing players and musicians that don't necessarily know how to read music or know theory, even though I talked about reading music and how I mentioned that. I highly recommend that all of you work on that and get better at that, and I still definitely believe that. But I think the most important thing of all that all of us should work on is really working on our ear. And there's a couple levels to that. You know, the first level is just getting to where you develop your ear. Now, the ear is one of those things that a lot of musicians or even non-musicians think that, like, oh, you know, certain people are born with a great ear, and, you know, some people, they have perfect pitch, which means that any note that they hear, they can actually tell you what the note name is, which is pretty amazing. You know, I don't have perfect pitch. But, you know, the ear is definitely something that you can develop and work on and get better at. So, you know, when I was a kid, I didn't necessarily have a great ear. I didn't figure out a lot of songs by ear in the beginning. But as I worked on it, I got better at it, I was able to do it. And, you know, all throughout college, when I got really, really into transcribing jazz and all kinds of stuff, I got much better at it, and my ear developed immensely from doing all of that. So the ear training, you know, is one of those things that it's kind of subjective to a lot of people. They're not sure, like, well, what do I do? How do I work on my ear? What are the things that I can do? There's actually lots of things you can do. I mean, to keep it simple, one of the things that I tell a lot of my students to do is take a song, any simple little folk song or like nursery rhyme or something, and kind of play any random note on the guitar, like right here, right? And sing that note, okay? You should sing any note that you play on the instrument, and you should be able to sing it perfectly in key like this. I don't know if I'm perfectly in key, but I'm trying to get there. But what you want to try to do is work on just singing random pitches first on the guitar. So just any random pitch. Because some people, I'll have students where they'll play a pitch and they'll sing, right? That's way off and it sounds terrible. If you can't match your voice to the pitch of the guitar, that doesn't mean that you have a bad voice. It means you have a bad ear, okay? When I was in college, every musician in college had to take 4 semesters of ear training and sight singing, and it's still like that today now. You know, most of the time anyway. But they basically will tell you it doesn't matter if you're a singer or not. Every musician, whether you're a piano player, guitar player, drummer, violinist, whatever, we all should be able to sing any pitch we hear and sing it in tune. Okay, that's how you know if you have a good ear. So, you know, the first step for all of you is just sing random pitches on the guitar. And work on your voice. If you're off a little bit when your ear goes up or down, that actually means if your voice goes up or down, that actually means that your ear is working, okay? So, for instance, if I go to hit this note and I'm out of tune a little bit, right, I'm a little sharp. So you bring your ear brings your voice down a little bit. And that's how you're working on your ear. You're instead of just listening to it, you're actually singing it. So it's kind of like la. That's pretty close, right? So just sing random pitches on the guitar. Sometimes if it's too low or too high, maybe you should pick a different note. But that's the first thing. If you're not good at doing that, work on that first, okay? Because it's you're not working on your voice. You're actually working on your ear, like I said, because your ear makes your voice go up or down to match the pitch of the note, okay? So the next level, one of those things that you can work on is, I was getting into this, like take a nursery rhyme or a simple song, and you basically start any random note. I originally picked this E flat, and you want to try to figure the song out by singing it, like say like happy birthday on this note, right? Happy birthday to you, right? I know where the notes are, but this is what you do. You sing it first, then you find the note. Happy birthday to you, right? So as you're singing it, you try to find the pitches in your guitar. And then after you do it there, then you do it in a different key. Happy birthday to you, right? I'm using my falsetto a little bit, but that's what you got to do sometimes if you're singing high notes, okay? That's a great exercise. You could sing Happy Birthday. You can sing, Shenandoah. You can sing Danny Boy, whatever. Any old folk song. Just hit a random note on the guitar and try to figure out the whole melody on that note, okay? So while you're singing random notes, you're singing these simple melodies with the guitar, you're starting to get your ear in tune to the instrument. Any great improviser, and as I get more mature and older as I play, and I talk to other musicians that have been around a long time, they're always talking about, you got to play what you hear in your head. You got to play what you hear in your head, right? So that's the whole point of developing your ear, okay? Now, what are some other things you can do? Well, the first thing that you really want to do is sing and memorize intervals, okay? Intervals are the building blocks of music, okay? If you don't know about intervals, you should look them up. Use YouTube, look up what are intervals, what are the different names of different kinds of intervals, right? I would look that up and then come back and we'll talk about it. But basically what you want to do is you want to sing and memorize all the different kinds of basic intervals that there are. So let's say if we do the intervals of the major scale, what I tell my students is sing the name of the interval. So let's say we're in the key of C in C major scale. We're going to do all the intervals of the C major scale. So you're going to go, right? You're going to sing a major second, but you're going to sing the name. This way you're putting the name with the sound. So major second, major second. You do major third, major third, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, perfect fifth. As you can see, I don't have a great voice, but I'm kind of getting there, right? So that's what you want to do. You want to sing all of your intervals and memorize the sounds, okay? And when I was in high school and in college too, you would actually, this is what you would do in these ear training classes. Then you'd have to take tests on this. So the teacher would play them on the piano and you'd have to take these ear training tests. That's a great way to build your ear up. You can get apps on your phone, ear training apps. I actually don't use any, but I mean, I've heard there's a lot of good ones, so I would look those up. But it'll play a whole bunch of random intervals and then you have to like answer what they are. That's a great way to train your ear. But you got to sing them first. You got to get that sound in your head. Okay? Don't forget minor intervals. Minor second, minor second, minor third, minor third. Remember, we're singing these. We're not just listening to them. Some teachers will say, play intervals and listen to the sound. That's cool, but it's not as good as singing because when you're singing, remember, your ear is working to make your voice sing in tune, okay? What else should you sing? You should sing any kind of scale that you know. You should be able to sing that scale. Any kind of arpeggio that you know, you should be able to sing that arpeggio, okay? This is how you build your ear. If you get very, very familiar with every kind of scale and interval and arpeggio, once you go to figure out songs off records, every riff, every melody, every chord is made up of intervals. That's all it is. So if you get the building blocks of music, the intervals, it gets much, much easier to figure out songs and transcribe, okay? So let's say if I was going to do the C major scale. You want to try singing pitch as good as you can. Then you start singing the interval, some of the arpeggios. The major 7. La, 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 la. Oh, whoop, I messed that one up. Try it again. La, 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 la. Right? Dominant 7. La, 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 la. Minor 7. La, 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 la. Right? Different kinds of scales. Harmonic minor. La, da, 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 la, la. I tell all my students, when you're learning a new scale or an arpeggio or whatever, if you can't sing it, then you don't know it. You have to be able to sing it. You have to get that sound in your head, okay? Let's say you're learning a new mode. Let's say you're learning like a Lydian mode, right? You got to get that sound, that color in your head. Do, do, da, 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 la, da, 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 la, da, 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 da. Okay? That's what you want to do. Build that ear up. Fill it with all these sounds, different arpeggios, different scales, different intervals, all that stuff. That's another side of the spectrum you can work on. A lot of self-taught players that don't do any of this stuff tend to also have great ears. And they get their great ears from learning stuff off records, recordings, radio, whatever the hell you want to call it, downloads, streaming. Learning songs, riffs, licks, melodies by ear. You should do that as much as possible. Jazz musicians and blues musicians as well, one of the biggest things that we all do is we transcribe, which means we listen to a solo from one of the masters like Miles Davis or Wes Montgomery or John Coltrane or whoever, and we learn their solos by ear. That's how jazz musicians build their entire vocabulary. They learn how to get their time feel, their phrasing, their rhythm feel, vocabulary, all that kind of stuff. They get all of that from transcribing solos and riffs and licks and everything off of records. That's something that you definitely should do. You like a song that you listen to, could be any kind of music, could be rock, country, jazz, metal, whatever. Start learning those songs off of the recordings. It's going to be hard at first. YouTube has a great function where when you play a song, if you look in the settings, it lets you play a song at half speed, quarter speed, that kind of thing. That's a great way to slow recordings down, which makes it easier, right? The jazz musicians back in the day, back in the 40s and stuff, they slowed their records down. So it's not cheating. It's something that has always been done. It's just so much easier now with YouTube and other, you can use other software apps that are out there as well. But YouTube has a good function on there. Okay, so singing, intervals, scales, arpeggios, learning songs, learning riffs, licks, everything that you can off of recordings. Try to avoid using YouTube video and watching their fingers. That's not learning by ear, that's learning by eyes. Do it where it's a recording where there's not a video of someone playing. Try to do it that way, okay? It's going to be harder. I'm sure you'll find somebody on the internet playing it and you can just get it that way much, much quicker, but you're not helping yourself. You got to be able to do it by ear, okay? Now, what's the point of all of this? Is the point that when you're playing in a band or you're on a gig or whatever, that if somebody plays something, you can play it right back right away instantaneously? That's one of the things, yes, that's a great skill to have, being able to just, let's say you're jamming with a band and you don't even know what the hell the key is, you don't know what the song form is, but you're just jamming and you're having fun, you're playing some free form. If you have a great ear, you can just play along and you can make it happen, okay? It's a really cool skill to have. Now, the main reason I think is the whole point of an improvising musician is to always be playing what you hear in your head. Guitar players often run their fingers around, they play all kinds of licks and scale patterns and shredding stuff, and they're not hearing any of this in their head. And when you're playing music like that, it's not going to have a lot of depth to it, and the audience is not going to connect to it. Okay, that doesn't mean you have to play slow all the time. John Coltrane played sheets of sound, but I guarantee you he heard every note in his head as he was playing it. That's why it was so powerful and it was so impactful, because he was meaning every note he plays. So it doesn't mean you have to play slow all the time. For those of you who are familiar with the great George Benson, he's one of the greatest jazz guitar players of all time. He's very, very famous for scatting while he's playing, which means he's singing the lines as he's playing, right? Now, this is something that most good jazz musicians can actually do, but George Benson is so famous for it because he has an incredible voice. I sing while I play too, but my voice isn't that great, so nobody's going to want to hear me do that. But when I'm on stage, the audience can't really hear that. People can hear it when I'm in my room, but on stage nobody can hear that, which is a good thing. But when Benson does it, he has such a great voice that it's part of his style. So in other words, like, let's say if Benson's soloing over C minor 7 chord, he's going to do... Right? I'm doing falsetto a little bit, but you see what I did? I was singing every note that I played. Wasn't as good as Benson, but what I'm trying to get to the point of is start working on improvising where you're singing while you're playing, so that you're only playing the notes that you're hearing in your head, okay? This is going to develop your ear. It's going to also help your phrasing, because if you sing what you play, you're going to work on your phrasing more. And what do you do when you're singing? You stop and you breathe. More of us need to stop and breathe while we play. You hear about people talking about playing with space. That's how you do it. So what you do is you just start, and you don't have to play to background tracks. You don't have to play tunes or anything. You could just sit there and just improvise random melodies, but you're singing them while you're playing. This is how you get your ear in tune with your hands. And once they're in tune with each other, then you're going to be on a whole other level. So let's say if I'm doing some melodic stuff. Right? I'm just singing what I play in my head, okay? If you work on that, you'll get good at it, you'll get more comfortable at it. Then, let's say you want to apply it to playing a jazz tune. You're playing some changes. If I'm playing a tune like All the Things You Are, I might be able to sing while I'm playing. Maybe I'll have to play simpler, but I think your notes and your ideas will have more meaning if you do this. So... You see what I'm doing? It's not the greatest singing, but you get the idea. I'm trying to get my fingers in tune with my playing, okay? So I'm giving you a lot of different ideas. It's kind of like some of my other lessons where it's going to take you maybe a year to get through all this stuff. But these are some things I want you to start thinking about and start adding to your practice. Every day when you're practicing, if you're not working on your ear, you're on the wrong track. You should always be working on your ear, whether you're singing scales and intervals, whether you're improvising melodies while singing, whether you're transcribing, learning things off of recordings. These are all things that you need to do to become a great musician, okay? So I hope that gave you some food for thought, gave you some great ideas. If you enjoyed the lesson, please hit subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Have a great night.